Good morning. Welcome to worship today. I'm losing things here, discombobulation. Well, lots to talk about. Today we are going to a baseball game. Do you remember the old Bill Cosby routine about special class? Today we're going to a baseball game. Tomorrow we're going to Japan. You remember Bill Cosby? I guess we don't talk about Bill Cosby anymore. Anyway, that was part of my childhood. We are going to see the Milkmen today. And one of our members bought an extra couple tickets. So if you know anybody who would like a free ticket to the Milkmen game, somebody who could use them, let us know. Come and see Priscilla after church. Hopefully you took one of these on your way in. One of the things the church council did at our last meeting was we started answering the question, what do we do now? We have money. We don't necessarily have the expenses we used to have not having the building. We have a window where we get free rent and use of this space. It's not to say that when that window is over, we won't still be here renting space back. But it was a chance for the church council to answer this question, what do we do now? And one of the ideas that came up was to start a ministry to seniors in the area, doing fun activities and trips for seniors, because that's what we have mostly. And so, yeah, and so our first, one of our brilliant church council members who happens to be related to me came up with the name for our group. We're going to call it Senior Moments. Isn't that great? That's clever. So we'll continue to have our Wednesday lunches, but we'll try to reach maybe even a bigger crowd of people in the area. Seniors, we will be doing all kinds of fun things. I don't think we will have trips to the casino just yet, but you never know. So, but it'll be fun, and hopefully we can expand our reach a little bit, and we can serve people who, I think a lot of people move to Greenfield in their retirement because the size of the homes are a little smaller, and they can, have a little kind of downsize a little bit. And maybe they have left their church somewhere and no longer have a connection. And so they're just waiting for somebody to step out and invite them to church. So we are going to try to reinvent ourselves a little bit through this new ministry. And one of the events is this trip to La Crosse. We did it a couple years ago. It'll be very similar. Two small changes. One is we are going to rent vans to bring everybody over there. It's about half the cost of the train, and it gives us a lot more flexibility. And while we're over there, we will be able to do a few more things because we'll have transportation. The second thing is that we are going to go on the La Crosse Queen, which is a paddle boat that goes up and down the Mississippi to look at the fall colors. So absolutely going to be great. And the last thing is, Sharon and I are moving to a new home, and we can't wait to welcome you all. We sent a little notice out this last week, so some of you have already seen pictures of it. If you want to see more pictures, we've got plenty of pictures. We're really excited about it. We're still working out all the details for closing, but hopefully we'll figure that all out this weekend. We have to close on our house in St. Francis on the 21st, so it'd be nice if it happened before then, but we'll see.
You can sleep here.
So, if you see us at your door at 10 o'clock at night with all of our stuff,
Where are you moving to?
We are moving to, it is the town of Richfield. It's about 10 miles further away from here than where we live now, in St. Francis. If you go up, yeah, it's kind of by Holy Hill, on the way to Holy Hill. If you know where Menominee Falls
And are you going to get here on
and
Sunday?
Germantown, well, it's only 10 minutes further.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure I will. We have no interest in leaving either of the church calls, and I blame my wife. She found this house, and it was done by a student of Frank Lloyd Wright in his 20s, and you do idealistic things in your 20s. And so it's kind of a unique house, to say the least. And we just wanted to go look at it to see what it was like. We've paid money to view a number of Frank Lloyd Wright houses. And this was free. You just have to find a realtor who will take you through it. And so we did. And then we could not get it out of our minds. The next couple days we kept asking each other, what do you think? What do you think? So anyway, the rest is going to be history soon.
Today's reading is written in the 15th chapter of Luke. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what if the woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the wealth that will belong to me.' So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region. And there he squandered his wealth in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that region, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you.' So he set off and went to see his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now the elder son was in the field, and as he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and has been found." Here ends the reading.
Not fair. Do we have any older brothers or sisters here, firstborn?
Oh, yeah.
And the little kid gets away with everything? I was the little kid. It clouds a little bit how I see this, maybe. But so does having heard this story forever and ever and ever. So I set out to preach on this, and I needed to get some help. So I read a book by a Jewish rabbi, and it took me most of the day yesterday. And then I got to church and I gave a terrible sermon, because it was full of all of this stuff that I read that was probably interesting to me and to no one else. And it didn't really have a point. That's what my wife said. So after much soul searching and thinking about this and figuring out how do we get into this text in a new way, I have an idea. So you know, as a pastor, I do not talk about sin all that much, right? In fact, can you remember the last sermon I preached about sin? You can't. I was told a misstatement or a falsehood from a very prominent person in religion growing up. His name was Billy Graham. You remember who Billy Graham was? Billy Graham said that the word sin is an archery term, and it means to miss the target. So you're shooting at the target and you miss. And I remember him saying that some people miss the target, and some people barely miss the gym teacher. I remember that joke. I thought, that's funny, right? But just recently, I came across, he's actually the guy who wrote the novel The Shack. It's an incredible novel about this guy who loses his daughter one day at the beach, and she's taken from him, and then it's his journey to kind of reconcile that. It's a beautiful story. If you, it doesn't sound beautiful, I get it. It's a very difficult subject, but the writing is absolutely beautiful, and how he portrays God as a loving being, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and gives you a different understanding of what was going on. Well, he says that sin is not, in Greek, the word is hamartia, is not about missing a target at all. It's not about the target. I think Billy Graham was thinking that the target was perfection, and as soon as you miss the target, you are no longer hitting the mark. But what he said is, and I went and checked this out in my Greek grammar textbook, and he's right. What it means, hamartia, the word ha means the opposite of. So it's kind of like the word un in our, if it is likely that you will go to the baseball game, well then it is unlikely is the opposite, right? So ha is that preposition in Greek that means the opposite or negate. And then martia comes from the Latin, the same word that comes the word marrow. And where do we find our marrow? In the center of our bones. And so what sin is to go against what is in the center of your being, your bones. So you're doing something that is not characteristic of who you are down deep. Now, we add that to a layer that the church, in a way, in an attempt to control people, has said that you are all sinful people. You are all bad people, and that no matter what you do, you can never be good on your own. And I don't think that's very helpful either. We'll put that in the Billy Graham category of things. I think that God created us to be wonderful, loving people, and at our very core, love is what you find. So, Luke, in his preface to these 3 stories today, says that Jesus was eating with tax collectors and sinners. And when we hear the word sinner, we think, oh, maybe these people, visit prostitutes, or maybe they cheat or gamble or do some other thing. Or maybe, as the Greek would say, they have lost their way. They have lost who they are. They no longer remember that they are good and loving people. And they are acting not out of good and love, but they are acting out of something else. And so Jesus tells these 3 parables. And the first one is about a lost sheep. Thus the word lost. So a sheep wanders away. You know why the sheep wandered away? Was it a bad sheep? No, it was not a bad sheep. It was a sheep. It was doing what sheep do. They wander. They don't know any better than to walk away. Even it's to their own peril. They will walk away because that's what they do. If there's any blame in this story, it is with the shepherd who is not carefully watching the sheep to make sure they don't wander off. And Jesus says to this crowd of tax collectors and sinners, well, who of you who has 100 sheep? Well, first of all, none of the tax collectors have time to have sheep, and the other people there probably don't have enough money to rub 2 nickels together, so they don't have 100 sheep. So they're kind of snickering. But privy to this conversation are the scribes and the Pharisees. And guess what scribes and Pharisees have? They have money, so they probably do have 100 sheep. And so Jesus is telling this story, and we can't blame the sheep, right? It's not the sheep that's missing the mark. If anything, it might be the shepherd that misses the mark. But as soon as the shepherd realizes that the sheep are lost, that one of the sheep has wandered away, he leaves everything and he goes to find it. Now that does not make much sense if you are someone who would like to keep the other 99 sheep. Because in the wilderness, if you leave to go find 1 sheep and you come back, the 99 are not going to be there because they're sheep. They wander. And then Jesus tells a story about a woman who has 10 silver coins. 10 silver coins! None of these people were women who had lost 10 silver coins. Now at least you can't blame the coin for being lost, right? A silver coin takes no part of the blame for being lost. I think that's the point Jesus is trying to make. When people are sinners, it's not their fault. They're not acting out of who God is. They have forgotten who they are. Have you ever seen someone who has a terrible addiction? We don't point fingers at them and make fun of them for being bad at whatever. We have compassion on them because they have an addiction. Well, people didn't understand addiction at the time of Jesus. They didn't understand sin all that well either. And so the woman lights a lamp. She does everything in her power to find this coin. She searches diligently until she finds it. So it was her fault that she lost the coin, but she makes up for it. She figures out what she has to do to rectify the situation, and she does it. The third story is a little more complicated. It's about the two sons. One of them is the younger son. Now, I have heard in this parable that the younger son did something shameful in asking his dad for his inheritance before his dad was dead and in the ground. Not true. I read this in this book. So one little thing I'm going to share with you. When you have a house and you have multiple children, the firstborn son gets 2/3 of everything you have. The rest, third, is divided up among the rest of your children at the point where they leave your household to go start their own household. Not a shameful thing. Actually, maybe the dad was like, maybe it's time for you to kind of spread your wings a little bit. Anybody ever been there? Today's kids seem to leave and then they come back. They're like boomerangs. So, not a shameful thing to ask your dad for your share of the inheritance. He isn't saying, I don't love you, Dad, or I wish you were dead, or any of that. There's no baggage that comes with this. He simply is going to try and set out and set up his own household. So he does that, but he's not very good at it, right? He winds up with all of this money. And what young person that ends up with a bunch of money is very good at managing it? In fact, what really matters is not how you manage that money, it's how you learn from how you manage that money. Because life is long, and you have a long life ahead of you. And some people would just write somebody off who makes a mistake. You know who those people were? The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes. They wrote people off. I think Jesus is trying to say there's something else going on here. So then the older brother is out in the field, and you know the story. The younger brother, he is there, and there's a famine. He has no more money. He hires himself out to a pig farmer. Like, can you think of anything less desirable as a Jew than to go and care for a stranger's pigs as a job, and the pigs eat better than you do? Seriously, this is the height of showing this guy the error of his ways. And then it's interesting what it says about the younger brother is he comes to himself. That's what Jesus was saying this is about. It's about not living as the one God created us to be. He was living as someone else, not living out of the values that were a part of who he was. He made mistakes, but he came to himself. He remembered who he is. And then he comes home, and you know what? His dad was waiting for him. You know why? Because his dad knew he was probably going to make a mess of all this. And I know some dads would be like, I told you so, but he's not like that. He is like, in the other two stories, the one who realizes that a mistake has been made, and he'd do everything to fix it. Life moves on and goes forward. And what does he do? He runs out and he hugs him and he kisses him. And he tells his servants to bring something and put it on his finger. What was it? A family ring. You know what the family ring symbolized? This is who you are. This is a sign of your true identity. This ring, you can go into the marketplace if you forgot your Visa card, and you can show them the ring, and they will write down how much credit you have, because it's who you are. So the first thing the Father does is he wants him to remember who he is. So, from these parables, I think we can have a different understanding of sin than maybe what the traditional church is and has. The traditional church says about sin that you are all sinners and you're terrible and your true nature is sin. Don't believe that. It's not really true. It might make it easier to control you or to make you feel bad or to get you to give money or whatever reasons that came about for this line of thinking. But the truth is that God has created you to love. To be at the center of your being, from the marrow of your bones, to live out a life of generosity and grace and love toward other people and to yourself. And one last thing, does anybody feel lost? Have you ever felt lost like I feel lost? I was talking with my wife, and when she retired, she was kind of lost for a while. She didn't quite know how to replace what was in her life a very busy, sort of meaningful, purpose-filled life. We all feel lost sometimes. And what this parable reminds us is that Jesus comes to us and he puts a ring on our finger and he says, you are part of my family. Doesn't matter the mistakes that you have made. What matters is that you come to yourself. You live out who you are.